Hey, everyone, we're live. I'm Thomas Michaud. Oh, you already knew that. And if you're new here, I'm Thomas Michaud. Welcome. Welcome to Real Guitar Live. This is the first Thursday of every month. I'll answer all your questions about playing guitar that I can and do my best job. We have a bunch of great questions today, too. Boy, and I'm sure more to come. Welcome, everybody who's already on the live stream. And if you're watching this pre-recorded later on, welcome. There's a lot of good stuff here. And if you're watching it a day or so after we filmed it, you're going to be able to jump around using timestamps. So, and feel free to ask your questions in the comments on YouTube, too. It takes me a little longer, but I will try to answer those as well. So, for those of you who are new, the basic format is I'm going to look at all the pre-submitted questions, do my best to answer them with intelligence and compassion. And then I'll go and answer questions that are submitted in the chat. Feel free to submit your questions while I'm talking. Please start with the word question because that's the only way I can really see if it's a question or just another comment in the sea of comments. With that said, and I'm going to do a drawing, as always. Every month I do a drawing for the members of Real Guitar Success who have completed the practice plan for the month. That means that they've completed at least 10 minutes of a practice session every day during the weekday. And at the end of the month, they get entered into a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. So with that, let's get started. We've got so many questions. I have the melody separate and the chords separate. I want to combine them into a fingerstyle solo. How do I do that? So this is something that's dear to my heart. I really enjoy creating melodies and then I'll make chords with them and put them together into fingerstyle solos. I want to start by saying, I think this is important distinguishing. It's important to distinguish questions from something that is bigger than just a question that you could ask. For example, if somebody were to ask me, how do you ride a bike? Now, we've all done that. Most of us have done that. And you can't really answer that question. You ride the bike through a combination of practice. I mean, you can answer it by not answering it directly because it's a process and you learn. And it's the same with this particular question. It's not wrong. It gives me a chance to talk about this. Playing fingerstyle guitar by combining melodies and chords, whether it's you've heard somebody else's melody or you've made your own, it's a process. You learn to do that. It's not something somebody can tell you how to do. I can tell you in short, for me, what the process looks like is I'll play the melody on my guitar and I'll try to play it up in the, I'll show you where I'm aiming here, up in this top part of the guitar near the bridge because I want to make chords mostly up in here, and so I'm going to try and play it here. If it goes higher, I just have to, it's going to be a little more complicated, but I can still work with it. And then I'll play chords to the melody. I'll often record that so I don't forget, I can play the melody back and then play chords and see what sounds good. Or, and sometimes I'll reverse it, I'll come up with a basic chord progression, and then I'll try to see if the melody fits there. I'll go back, adjust the chord progression, record it again, kind of a back and forth, until I can play the chords on the recording and then play the melody along with it, and it sounds right to me. Then I know I've got the right chords, basically. Then I'll go through the slow, for me anyway, process of figuring out what, with the chord, how can I play that melody in the chord? So as you can imagine, if you're just starting out, that's not going to be easy. Not just to figure it out, but even to play it if you knew the right way to do it. The best thing to do is to play lots of fingerstyle solos, preferably other people's, either pop songs or things that people have arranged, and see how they do it. And then apply those techniques to your own practice. And then work on it a little at a time. If it's important to you, I would work on that aspect of it every day along with playing solos and exercises. The next question. Please demonstrate a bluegrass strumming pattern and the folk style strumming pattern. So folk style patterns are often this simple. Often with a bass note. There's also finger picking patterns that are common in folk style. Or just, this is a very common one, just up and down the chord with your fingers. You can do it with a pick, by the way. More common to do that with your fingers, unless you're going to be strumming and you need the pick later. Bluegrass, I'm less familiar with bluegrass, but the ones I've seen are just fast versions with a bass note and a strum. Sometimes with alternating bass. Now, I'm not a bluegrass picker, so that's, from what I've seen, that's probably one of the more basic standard type strumming, but I'm sure there's plenty of others that I'm not aware of. In your opinion, on equipment, even though one product is not for all, I get that, Paul's asking, what's a good acoustic guitar in the price range $600 to $800? And he says, I'm more of a strummer than a picker. That does matter, because I really like this guitar. It is more than that price range, but it wouldn't, even if it wasn't that price range, it might not be the best. I can strum fine on it, but because of the smaller body, it tends to cut through for a fingerstyle guitar, and I really like it for that. I've also put very light strings on there, and again, for my fingerstyle guitar, so I don't wear out my hand when I'm pressing lots of different notes. There are a lot of guitars in that price range. There are a lot of guitars I don't even know about. I would, if you're asking my opinion, I would probably pick a Yamaha in that price range. They're just in that range of guitars. They make good guitars for the money, a lot of bang for buck. I think there's probably a lot of others out there too. My brother has a Taylor that's in that price range. It's one of the lower, no, I'm sorry, a Martin, a lower price Martin. Most Martins are thousands of dollars, over $1,000 at least. But this one is, I think, a $500 or $600 Martin. I really liked it. I thought the action was very good. But in general, I have more experience with Yamahas than I think a lot of people, musicians have agreed with me. In the price range, that kind of middle price range and lower price range, Yamaha gives you a lot for your money. When you get to the higher price range, I probably would pick a Taylor or Martin, or it depends. Depends on what you're playing. If I'm more familiar with nylon string guitars, and there are specific brands that make nylon. I wouldn't choose a Martin or a Taylor. One model guitar I think is a great model for that, in that price range, is the Yamaha FGTA. It's actually, what I know it as is the trans acoustic. It has some kind of little electronic built in, so when you play it, it adds a little reverb to your playing, and it makes it sound really good. I think it's really cool. I've played them, and it's fun. It makes it fun to play. Another guitar that's in that price range, very close, is the Yamaha LL6 ARE. Now that's generally a jumbo guitar. What that means is a dreadnought has a kind of flat sides up here, and a jumbo is just a little more rounded. But it's great for strumming. It's going to be fuller, as is the transacoustic dreadnought. Fuller than this style of guitar, which is a smaller body. And for strumming, you probably want something a little fuller. This is no reverb or anything like that, but it's a good basic guitar for under $600, at least on Sweetwater. It's going for $569. That transacoustic's going for $679 on Sweetwater. I'm sure you'll find it different prices in other places. I own an up level from that, the LL, I think it's 26 I have. It goes LL 6, 16, 26, 36. I think it goes all the way up to 56. But I have a higher model, and I think it's a great guitar for the money. Mine was around $1,000, $1,200, something in that price range. So I will post these links to these guitars, and I have another one on there, just on the show notes in a couple of days to have that. But again, I think there's probably a lot of good guitars in that price range. It's a good price range to find a good guitar for, a semi-professional, amateur, semi-professional. Pros are going to spend $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and so on. Every time I change a string on a classical guitar, that's important, it takes a few days to stay in tune. Yes. Is there a way to reduce this time? And alternately, is there a certain tune that just stays in tune faster, a certain string, I'm sorry. This is Jaime. Yama. Jaumae. So that is a thing. You're not alone. It always takes my nylon strings a while to stretch out. They're nylon, they're stretching. You put them on, you tune them up. They're going to try and get back to where they were, unstretched, basically. So here's what I do. If I need my guitar that next day for an event or something, I'm going to change the strings the night before, and I'm going to tune it many times. It stays in tune faster the more often you tune it because you're helping it stretch. I'll even gently tug on the strings, gently, and kind of help them along to stretch a little bit if I need it in tune in faster. If I'm no rush, I'll string the guitar, tune it up, and then let it set for a half an hour or so, then tune it up, another half an hour, tune it up, and then I'm ready to play. It's still going to go out of tune. I just will play for 10, 15 minutes and then stop and tune it up. That will last a couple of days. I'll keep doing minor tunes, and it gets closer and closer. And after about 2 or 3 days, it just stays in tune. That's the way it is. No, I don't believe there's any string that stays in tune faster. I could be wrong, but if there is, I'm not aware of it. Grant asks, what are some guitar accessories you would recommend for your students? I noticed on one of your videos, a particular location you seem to have mounted a pick holder. That is, let me show you that guitar right quick. He's talking about this right here. So that's not something I bought. I took Velcro and I put a little piece of Velcro on each pick, one side, and of course the other side of the Velcro, so it sticks there. That is because I'm playing this style of guitar with my fingers. But sometimes I'll play a melody with a pick and I want it close and handy, so I can grab my pick, and then I can stick it right back very quickly. Now, for a steel string guitar, they make little pick holders. I've seen them, pick holders that you can stick several picks inside, and it has a little spring thing and has sticky stuff on the back, and you can stick it there if you want. Some of the other accessories I'd really recommend for guitar is to have a capo. I think a capo is a good thing to have. And you don't know how to use it, you got to have one to experiment and use it. And there's lessons on my blog and in Real Guitar Success on how to use a capo. It allows you to do things like changing a key and to try different, even in the same key, to just play different forms of the chord. Definitely should have some kind of cleaning stuff, at least a cloth and some guitar polish. It really pays to keep your guitar generally clean, but also to wipe down the strings, preferably with a different cloth so you don't get the polish on the strings. But it'll make your strings last longer if you wipe off the oil from your fingers every time you play. And I'm talking steel string guitars. It doesn't matter on the monofilament nylon strings. Certainly a guitar stand. And I have probably in this house alone half a dozen guitar stands just because I wanted it easy to be able to put my guitar down and not have it fall over. And I also have some stands on the wall. You probably see that. Yeah, there's one. Yeah, I'm pointing the wrong way there. One there on the wall. That's totally optional. I like having it handy there, but you know, some rooms I wouldn't put it on the wall. That's the most important accessory. Of course, a tuner. Oh, the obvious ones I'm missing. A guitar tuner, electronic tuner. I know some people think that you should tune with a tuning fork or tune by ear, and that's all fine, but still, I think every guitar player should have an electronic tuner and use it, even if they're tuning by ear to check their ears. But personally, I just go to my tuner every time. I don't want to take a chance of being out of tune. I'll tune by ear if I have to, but I want to have a tuner handy. And there are a lot of different tuners. I won't get into that now, but mostly I use these Diodario on all my guitars, little bitty clip-on tuners so you don't see them. See, there's a tuner back there all the time. It's a little teeny by Diodario, or Planet Waves. That's their alternate brand, they call these things. The other one I like is I don't have one handy. The tuners that kind of fold out. I do have one handy. This one. And I wouldn't use it on stage because I don't want to leave it there and have people looking at it all the time. I use the little teeny ones on stage, but this one's a little bigger and easier for me to see. It's by Polytune, and they make a couple versions. This is the expensive one, but the cheaper one is fine. It's a black one. I think it costs about $20-$30. This one, they charge $50-$60. I would buy it again. I don't need it. The $20-$30 one works just fine. Polytune. Okay, guitar accessories. It is fun to buy stuff for guitar. I notice sometimes it's more fun to buy stuff than to practice. So don't spend, if you can help it, don't spend at least as much time practicing as you spend buying things for your guitar and buying new guitars. I've been as guilty as anyone of that. Dan asks, when playing lead using scales, do you start on the low note, the first note of the scale? Either on the 6th, 5th, or 4th strings. Most songs seem to have the lead licks higher on the neck, but every chord chart or teaching device shows a starting point on the lower bass strings. So what I understand Dan to be saying is that when he sees a scale, so I'm going to take a typical, this is called an A minor pentatonic scale. That's the way you see it on a chart or somebody teaching it. And you're starting on that note. The main reason for that, by the way, is that's the root note. And when you're practicing a scale, you want to establish your ear where the key is, what the key is. That's an A note, and it says A scale. If I started on a different note, it'd be hard for my ear to hear, especially for people who are not experienced, to hear that that's an A scale. It just wouldn't sound like an A scale. And this is a practice device. Practicing scales is not the same as playing lead guitar. Learning scales is just an exercise, basically. It's not what you actually use when you're playing lead guitar. They're two different animals. And I think that might be where some of the confusion is here. You're not playing licks, and playing scales are two totally different things. Scales help you train your fingers to get in the right place and train your ear to hear the notes that are basically in that ballpark. It's like combining the notes that you get to pick from. But when you're playing licks and actual lead lines, you have to choose. And that takes a lot of practice. And I would actually learn specific licks, not just scales. So a lick might be something like this. Okay? That's a simple one, or a little more complicated. Now, I chose notes from the pentatonic scale, but that's not the pentatonic scale. That's some notes out of it. It's a selection of notes, and I would call it a lick because it's a kind of a phrase that you've heard probably often, especially in blues or rock blues guitar. Now, I'd practice that separately, and then I'd try to integrate that as I'm practicing my soloing. Your best practice for soloing, yes, practice your scales and practice some licks, but then spend some time just deciding where those belong by playing a simple chord progression on a recording device and then jamming over it every day, some amount of time. I mean, at least 10, 15 minutes a day. I know one guitarist that recommended a couple hours a day. She was excellent at improvising. But you're not going to play lead by just practicing scales in any form or fashion, or even just playing licks. It's a combination of those as tools and then extending those, using your ear to play something that sounds good. It helps to copy other people, but eventually you want to kind of stretch and change it to your own as well. Oh, I can keep this. I would like to know, Rod's asking, I would like to know, do performers have all their songs memorized so they are able to perform them all at any given time? I have trouble memorizing one or two, let alone play them from memory after a month of not playing them. Good question. I have a lot of experience with this. So first of all, I have, of my own songs, I have dozens and dozens, maybe 100 songs. When I'm performing regularly, yes, I play them all by memory. And I don't even think twice. I don't really think about it. They're sort of ingrained. I've practiced them and played them so often, it's not hard to play them by memory. That said, if I'm playing other people's music, it depends on the style also. It's not uncommon for jazz players, for example, to have charts So they'll lay out a chart. It doesn't mean that usually it's not the first time they've seen this, but it reminds them of what the chord changes are or the little licks that are involved in playing that. That's very common in jazz. Matter of fact, if you see jazz bands, you'll often see their music stands with charts. And in a lot of situations, people will pull out a book and play from a book. They're not trying to memorize the song. They play well enough and they've enough familiarity with the song to not just fumble through it. But it's very common, especially in certain types of music as well as certain situations. For an example, if I'm playing a casual, meaning I'm playing for an event, and they want me to play specific songs for something that I haven't played, I might review the songs, but I'm not going to try and memorize them just for that one event. I would bring some sheet music, or I call it chart. It's a sort of a simplified sheet music. And I'd play the song well enough ahead of time, but then I'd use the chart to keep me kind of on track. My own music, I want to memorize, and I want to put all my heart into playing it with full inflection and feeling and be present with the audience and give them a good show. Most rock top performers, they're going to memorize their music. This is just one small aspect of being a pro. And that doesn't mean you have to do that. One thing I will say, we're not used to memorizing stuff as adults. We just don't have to, for the most part. And the less you do it, the harder it is. When you actually spend time memorizing song, and I mean regularly, think of it like a muscle, going to the gym and exercising. Not work out one day and then 2 weeks later work out again. That doesn't do anything. You tear up the muscles, they get a little stronger, and then they go back to normal in a few days. If you do it a little every day, stretch your brain, memorizing it gets easier and easier. And I found that with classical music. That's, complicated, a lot of notes. I used to think it was very hard, but I just kept working at it, and it got easier and easier and easier. I think it's kind of fun, too. It's a challenge. But, pick things that are within your range. Don't try to jump 10 stories and then complain that it doesn't work. I say that because I've done that a lot of times, unfortunately. I am just a beginner. And this is Lois. And I was wondering if there's a particular type or brand of string that would be easier for my fingers until I toughen up. Right now I have D'Addario Foster Bronze EJ15s, very common by the way. Generally speaking, I would say that's a good string. But for a beginner, what you're talking about, Lois, I would recommend a string called Silk and Steel. D'Addario makes a good one. It's not only D'Addario, but they make a good one. And what Silk and Steel are is they're basically a metal string, but they have a coating to make them softer and easier on your fingers. I highly recommend it. Play, your fingers are toughened, then you can go back to the EJ15s or 16s, which I often use, EJ16s. EJ15s, I think, are a little stiffer. I can't remember which way they go. EJ15. No, they're pretty light. Those are the extra lights. Okay, you're not going to get lighter than that on an acoustic guitar. So yeah, Silk and Steel is the way to go. And then go back to the EJ15s. And you might even want to move up to the little stiffer gauge eventually, 16s. They just don't break as easily and are a little louder. Silk and Steel, remember that. How do we use and make chord progressions with power chords? Ooh, how fun, power chords. So basically, you would substitute in a chord progression the power chord. This is the power chord. Let's do that so you can see my guitar. Power chord. I would substitute the power chord for the major chord or the minor, because a power chord doesn't really tell you. It's missing the part that tells you if it's major or minor. So in a progression, you can't really tell if any of those chords are major or minor. Now, it's going to work better in some styles of music, and it really helps if you add a little rhythm in your right hand as well. There's not one formula to always substitute power chords for major chords, but I have tried, and I've had students try to take a song and just substitute every chord with a power chord, and it's kind of fun. Some songs sound better than others. You kind of have to experiment and see what works. Again, it depends on the style and what you're expecting to hear. How do we find the key in a song? Is there a certain place in a song to listen to know what key is in, what key it's in? So when you're listening to a song, what you're listening for is the note that sounds like the home note. Key means when you get to the note where it sounds like it's just resting, that's the key of the song. I usually do that by listening to the song and then going up on my bass string and going up and down till I find a note that sounds like home. So it sounds like resting. So if I'm playing a song like this, I'll go, there, that note sounds like the right spot. I happen to know it is. It's a C. It's the key of that song. Now, often you'll find a couple of notes and you'll have to fuss a little bit and to distinguish which is the right one. That's because, there's usually is two notes in a song that kind of compete for sounding like the home. There's more to that in a blog post and a lesson in Real Guitar Success. And I'll put links to that in the show notes so you have more process around that. I also will start, once I find a note, I'll start playing a scale that determines if it's major or minor, but more on that in the extra notes that I'll give you. Now he's asking, when practicing, should we work on just one song until it's done, or should we work on more than one song at a time? There's no absolute one right way to do that. I don't feel complete if I just keep learning parts of songs over and over, but it depends on what I want. If I'm just trying to work on some specific chord progressions and I find songs that have it in it, I might just practice that part of the song that has that chord progression. For an example, I was working on a classical piece the other day and it had a technique I wanted. I just learned, some part of that song that sound good that include that technique, but I didn't want to learn the whole song. I had no reason to. Generally, if you want to play the song, I would at least get up to a place where you feel like you can play all the way through it. Otherwise, you're not going to feel very good about your guitar if you're always just kind of going on before you actually learn the whole song. That takes some distinction of what songs you should be working on, because if you've gone too far over your head, it might be better to back up and do a simpler song and wait and come back to that song. He's asking also, how many minutes should we work on each song? That depends on a lot of things. How much is your practice session? If you're practicing a half an hour, I would start the practice session with, spending 3 to 5 minutes on warming up, doing some simple exercise that you can memorize quickly, but you can play slowly and focus on getting the technique right and relaxing, rather than trying to push it and go faster or anything like that. Then you might make a song your body of your practice session. Then you'd want to spend, if your practice session is half an hour, 15, 20 minutes on that song. Or what I would often do is play, 10, 15 minutes on a song and 10 or 15 minutes on some exercises that would complement what songs I'm working on, help me play the song better technique-wise. And then end your practice session with, a few minutes of playing something that you already that you already know and can play, kind of end on a high note and feel successful. Which should we do first? Work on technique or practice songs? Or practice a song? Again, in the context of a practice session, there's not one right or wrong. I would do both, and some days I might do one first and some days the other. I deliberately, today's practice session, usually I play technique first and then get to the songs I'm working on. But today I deliberately mixed it up just for variety and keep it interesting. I wanted to see what would happen. And I'll do that occasionally. So I think it was a judgment call here, but in general, I like to practice techniques on a regular basis, especially while I'm alert, because they're not as much fun as songs. And when I start getting tired, I'm less likely to want to play exercises. Okay, that's Next question. This is by Grant. Do you have a particular recommendation for an acoustic guitar pickup? I want to install a pickup on my Taylor acoustic steel string. The K&K mini pickup was one recommendation I received. He gave me the link to that, which was great, and I was able to look it up, and it looks fine. What I liked about it, it has these 3 little pickups. So you put them underneath the face of the guitar, underneath the bridge actually, and you spread them out so you're kind of covering the whole breadth of the bridge. And I also liked that it was already pre-wired. You're not going to have to solder things. And it didn't need a battery, which I thought was cool. More than once I've had pickups with batteries and the battery ran out right in the middle of a performance and I had to go scramble. Fortunately, I had the extra one, but it puts me out for a little bit. That said, there's different pickups that are better for different guitars. It's price range that was $100, a little over, sounds fine. I'm not hip to the newest, hottest technology. From what I've seen, both online and in the trade shows I go to, there's nothing new and revolutionary in guitar pickups. For steel string guitar, this is the type of guitar I'd probably use if I was looking for a steel string pickup. There are different sounds by different pickups. Some people want the sound of this pickup you put in the sound hole. It sounds a little more like an electric guitar. And maybe for like blues or rocky stuff, that might be a good choice. It doesn't feedback as easily too. This pickup tends to feedback a little easier. There's another pickup that's like a microphone in your guitar. It does sound more authentic as far as being like an acoustic guitar. The downside is it really feeds back very easily. Unless there's a way you have around that feedback, I'd probably, again, go with this style, the mini pickup, which is little sensors. They're called piezos. I think I said it right, P-I-E-Z-O. They sense the vibration on the face of the guitar when you play. Okay, next. Oh, nylon string, I do something different, and I won't go into that now. When people talk about playing when standing, my practice has been sitting, like most students, but standing is a whole new thing for me. Do I just do what feels right, or is there a best practice or any hints or tips? Bob from Omaha. Good question, Bob from Omaha. I think it's a good idea to practice once in a while, at least by standing. 3 reasons. One is I think it's nice to just some variety. It's a bit of a challenge if you've been sitting down. 2 is it helps relieve some of the back issues by sitting down, especially if you're sitting down with bad posture. And again, I wouldn't make all my practice by standing up, but occasional. And 3, if you're going to be playing for other people, it's nice to be able to stand and play. It looks good. It's not the only way to play for other people, but it's one option that's nice to have in your pocket. That said, it is a challenge. If you've been practicing sitting down, you stand up, it feels like a different ball game. Just a little shift in your guitar feels like a whole different thing. The main tip I can give you, Bob, is when you practice sitting down, put a strap on your guitar and tighten the strap so it stays in the exact same place when you're standing up. Now, I recommend students do this with acoustic guitar anyway because it gets the guitar sitting up like this and not slumping down. When you put the strap on, tighten it so it's just sitting on your lap, but not resting on your lap. In other words, you're touching your lap, but not being held up by your lap. So what that means is when you stand up, the guitar is going to stay in exactly the same place because of the strap is adjusted. That will help a lot. And then it's practice. It's practice to play something that you're sitting down, play it standing up, sit down, work on some part, stand up, work on that same part again, see if you can feel the differences. That's all I know about that. Now I'm going to shift over to pre-submitted to questions that you're asking on the live chat. And I'd love to have more questions. Please start with the word question. It's not likely I'll see it, honestly, if you don't. There's too many comments for me to really scrutinize and read every single one. So I'm going down looking for question. Oh, but I have to start from the top, right? Hi, I see a lot of comments. Welcome, everybody. Here's one. David says, I'm a member of Real Guitar Success, and I'm into fingerstyle. Should I occasionally go back to strum and bar lessons so as not to lose any skill achieved there, or would you staying the course? So, David, that's a great question. I don't know what level you're at. So, for an example, if you've gone through the beginner's journey, which is the basics of playing guitar, open chords, and all the basic skills, and then the bar chords for everyone, which teaches the bar chords and some more skills I squeeze in there between techniques for bar chords, and then you go on to fingerstyle. Depending on how were when you completed both those courses, I would say you don't need to go back there, but I often do recommend people review in general because at least my experience has been the first time I go through an online course or any course, I don't really get it 100%. And one of the benefits of online as a member of Real Guitar Success is you can go back. In college, I couldn't. I got what I got and move on. But in the online world, you can go back and watch the videos again, pick the ones that you think are helpful, or pick the areas and kind of go through a series that you like to kind of take it up a notch. Bar chords are a good example. Often people don't get bar chords 100% when they get through the bar chord course. It depends, of course, on how much you practice and how much effort you put in. But in general, you'll find going back sometimes it's very motivational because you can kind of not only increase your skill level, but it's kind of affirming that, yeah, this has worked. I can actually do this better than the first time I tried it because you're a little farther along. You're going to use a lot of the techniques of the basic open chords and bar chords in fingerstyle, but there are other techniques in fingerstyle. You know, if you're really working on fingerstyle and you're confident with the material, I would say there's a good case to be made just really focusing on the fingerstyle at this point. And I would encourage you, another way to do that is to focus on the fingerstyle, but keep doing the practice sessions, because the practice sessions, I'll keep throwing in different aspects of open chords and bar chords and fingerstyle exercises. So I'm kind of filling in some of the other things by doing the practice sessions. Hope that helps, David. Hey, Mark. Late is okay. Let's see. Question. You're welcome, Lois, you're welcome. Okay. I'm sure there's at least one more question, and I found it. Discipline help. How do I stay disciplined to follow on more technique, because I tend to focus on what I already know, which is not much. This is Mandy. Yes, I hear that. What value do you place on technique over songs? Okay, this is a good, it's not the exact same question as the one I answered earlier, and I think it's a good to flesh out the issue a little more. Mandy, first of all, you're not alone. One of my biggest issues I find with students, I have a music school, but for you, those of you who don't know that, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I taught there for years, many years. And one of the biggest problems I found with students coming to me is they practice song after song after song, but they didn't practice enough on individual techniques to get the techniques right in the song. And playing just songs is a very slow boat to getting good at guitar, because you're not practicing the things you need to work on enough in enough concentrated period of time. So for example, if you need to learn to go from C to F chord, just one example, and you play a song that has that chord change once or twice, you have to play that whole song 3-4 minutes before you practice that one thing. Well, I'd rather you play 3 or 4 minutes on just that chord change, going back and forth, and do that every day for 7 days until you can do it smoothly and with relaxed hands, and then put that in the song. That's just one simple example. I could come up with dozens and dozens. That said, it's not easy to get yourself to play technique. The biggest thing you can do is to develop the habit of organizing your practice sessions ahead of time and then sticking to what you organize. So for an example, I've done this over a period of time. I'll write down on paper, I'm going to practice for this week this, this, and this. And each day I'll map out how my session is going to go. 3 minutes on this warm-up exercise, 10, 15 minutes on this song I'm going to work on, 5 minutes on this technique, 5 minutes on this technique, and then I'll close up with, I'll play something for fun. That's an exercise. I don't do that every time I practice. I'll do that for a week out, and it helps me organize my brain around how I should organize my practice session. And then, then I'll go on the next week and just kind of mentally try to do the same thing. Even if you do this once or twice, sit down and write out what you're going to practice. It will help you be clear. If you just depend on what you feel like in the moment, you're kind of dead in the water. You're going to go for easy, especially if you're a little tired or you've been busy and it's a little hectic. Go for create a process, and then you have something to refer to and stick to. Also, it really helps to develop the habit of making time to practice every day. And even if it's 10, 15 minutes, it's an important habit to create. And the best way to do that is to just make a time to practice every day, bare minimum, and get in the habit of doing that, and it gets easier and easier. I've said this many times, I like to do this every once in a while challenge. Well, for 30 days, I'm going to decide I'm going to practice every day without skipping a day, and I cross off a calendar 1 through 30. I have a little chart that's you'll find on my blog. Just these boxes with the numbers 1 through 30. And that always, at first it's hard because things keep coming up, but I make the practices small enough to be able to do it even if it's a busy day. And by the end of 30 days, it's so much easier for me to get myself to practice. It's a habit. Habits either work for you or against you. Okay. And then finally, it really helps to have some lessons and know what exercise and what techniques to practice at the right times to go with, a progression of songs that are getting progressively harder. Thanks, Mandy. And let's see. Question. My strumming is very choppy at the strings. How can I work on that but still change chords? If I look at fretting hand, my strumming goes choppy. Yes, you're trying to do, as we all do, too many things at once. So, yes, practice your chord change, but practice like this. I'm going from C to F. I'm not strumming. Okay, I did a bar F. I didn't mean to. How about this F? Let's say you're not doing bar chords, right? So I'm not strumming. I'm practicing the change, and I'm going to do it with a metronome and make myself do it fast and smooth to the point where I barely have to think about changing chords. Now I'm going to add a strum, a simple strum. Notice I didn't do anything complicated. I'm progressively adding complexity. Very slow. Now I'll start picking up. Now I'll add a little more complex strum. Now that's just one example. What I'm doing is progressively adding complexity to it. And what most people do is they learn a strum, kinda, they learn some chord changes, kinda, and then they try to put them together, and it just doesn't work. There's too many things going on at once that you haven't mastered yet. It's a little bit like, for me, like singing and playing. I have to work on each part separately and then put them together. Not a great singer, by the way. But it takes effort for me to actually do each one right. And I got to get that fairly well before I try putting them together. Next question. Thank you, Mandy. Good question. If you've been using the EJ45 strings on my acoustic, should I change to a heavier string or stay with the EJ45s? I would say in general, unless there's a problem with the EJ45s, I wouldn't change. I don't remember what gauge they are in terms of thickness of strings. Oh, it's nylon strings, yes. That's what we call normal tension. I do use the hard tension. Let me see. I think I use 46 myself. Yeah, they call this normal tension. The way classical guitar strings go, by the way, for those of you who don't know, they go normal, hard, and extra hard. They don't go light, medium, and heavy. Well, I don't know who came up with that, but yeah, normal, hard, and extra hard. A lot of classical and flamenco players use a hard string, and it's partly for volume. If there's no reason to change, though, I would look for a reason to change. I can't think of one unless you want more volume or you find the strings too rubbery. It feels uncomfortable for you. I think most students do use normal. And I, as a student in classical guitar, I think I always used normal for years and years. I don't remember ever going to hard strings. I didn't use hard strings until I started performing live. And I needed the volume and the punch that I get from a hard string. I tried extra hard, and I like even a little more punch, a little more sound, but they made me tired, and I didn't like that. And I play, for hours sometimes, so that wasn't necessary. So I went back to hard tension, right? Normal, hard, extra hard, the middle one. Question: how is Marco Polo doing? Miss seeing him on your show. I'm going to have to bring him back. He just got a cool haircut. He's looking pretty dapper, actually. He's doing great. Thanks for asking. Thanks for asking, Mark. Question. I think I got one more question here, and then I'll go ahead and do the giveaway, the drawing. Should you find out the tempo of a song and try to practice the chord change at that speed or slower to start? I would always practice a song slower to start and build up to the tempo. I mean, unless it's a really slow song to start with, right? But generally speaking, again, the principle is to lessen the challenge to where it's just giving you trouble and then bring it back up. That means adding tempo. That means adding complexities to strumming or chords. If you get to a place where it's feeling overwhelming, break it down again. Go back to where's the problem area. Is it this changing this chord is the problem area? I would not even just play the song at slow. I would tear it apart and practice the parts that are giving me problems slow, build them up closer to the tempo it's supposed to be, add them back in the song, and then start the song slow again and build it back up. Oh, I found another part that's still giving me problems. Go back there, work on that part, then go back and do it again. A series of circles. Keep coming back to the song, build it up. Yeah, now I can get through it. The whole song is okay, not in any particular parts, but I can't play it fast, start slow, and keep building up speed little by little over a period of time. Good question, and this is a principle I'll keep coming back at. Thank you, Rogelio. He says, great advice on strings. Okay, so let's do that drawing, and then I'm going to check and see if there's any other questions that added while I was doing the drawing. So please add your last minute questions. I'd be happy to answer them. Here, we got the hat, and shake it up, and let's see. This is for the $50 Amazon gift card, and these are members of my Real Guitar Success that have completed the 20 practice sessions for the month of August. We're already at September now, huh? Okay, and the winner is upside down. Pat! Pat Rourke, you got it. Good work, Pat. And good work for everyone who's in here and has completed the 20 practice sessions. The real winner is all of you because you're that much better at guitar now. Let's see. One more question. Two more. Good. Two more questions. Let's do this. Question. Why is your little finger bent? I am not being rude, just interested. No problem, Mandy. I chopped it. When I was 19 years old, I worked at a sandwich factory, and I ran in late for work one day and opened up a package of meat with all this gooey gelatin stuff and kind of not thinking carefully, jabbed the meat, I was trying to get the package off it, but it was still frozen in the middle and my hand slid down the blade and chopped my finger. It chopped all my fingers. I was able to recover all these except the pinky. The pinky had cut completely the tendon. So what they did is they operated on my leg, took some tendon out and put it in here, and that's what I ended up with. Actually, at first it busted and it was straight out. So this was an improvement. Crooked is better. It works, but see, it won't straighten out. Fortunately for guitar, I use these three on the right hand for my flamenco and classical stuff, and all the fingers on this hand, but I can get by without the pinky. I play piano a little bit, and it'd be nice to have it, but I can play well enough. It'd be a bummer if I was a pro piano player, but I'm not. No problem, and thanks for asking. Pete is asking, when doing your lessons, how long should I stay on a lesson before I move on to next lesson? I do practice every day, but don't think I am getting anywhere. Okay. So a couple things, Pete. If you're, I don't know where you're starting from. Generally speaking, here's what I tell students. You practice a lesson until you feel like you've gotten it about 80% of the way. And it is a feeling. There is no objective, that's 80%. You have to decide. You're doing two things. You've got some criteria to decide when to move on to the next lesson, but you're developing the muscle, I'm talking head muscle, of judging when you've completed enough of that lesson. And that in and of itself is a process. So when you're starting out, it's not as easy, but it gets easier as you go along. You need to know what you're aiming for. You decide this is about 80% of what I hear in the videos. That's your call. And most of the lessons have play-along tracks, so you can tell by the play-along track what it's going to end up sounding like. Now, I'm assuming you're starting from the beginning, because you're not getting anywhere. Are you saying you're still on the first lesson and you're afraid to move on? Or have you gone several lessons and you don't think you got the first ones? So maybe go back and judge. Are you at 80%? If you're at 80% and you moved on and you're at lesson 6, you are getting somewhere. This is an important point, which I'm glad you asked now, but you're going to have to hear it a lot of times in the future. You cannot judge if you're getting somewhere by how good you're playing. It doesn't work. And that's appropriate for beginners as well as pros. It's a big mistake, actually, to put your focus on, I need to play this, I'm here, I will have been successful when I get here. Change your focus to, I did my 20 minutes practice today, and I did it for 5 days in a row, and that was my commitment. That's success. Because the judgment of, I didn't get that good enough is flawed on several levels. One is it depends on your feeling for that day. It depends on a lot of variations. Some things are harder and some things are easier. It also will, unfortunately, it's a never-ending goal, because as fast as you say, I'm successful when I get there, the bar keeps going up higher. Because the better you get, the more you can see ahead of things that you want to learn. So you never get there. You say, I want to get to here, and as soon as you get to there, you've already seen some other things, and you're already thinking, but I should be able to play that. There's no end to it. Now, I can tell you, I've been doing this for 40-something years now. Not 50, 45. Anyway, there's no end to it. I keep coming up with things I should have more than when I was a beginner. And that's because I can see more that's possible. So if you're following the lessons and you're practicing, you are getting somewhere. If you're not following lessons and not practicing, you're probably not. That's the criteria. Question, should you learn a complete song before starting a new song? So Linda, I did answer that a little earlier, and I'm not going to go over it again. You might want to watch the replay to this. I answered that exact question a little bit earlier. Next, are the beats of electronic guitars and normal guitars same? Or is it different? And how is it different? No, electronic guitars and acoustic guitars have a different sound because of the electronics and the acoustics, but the beat in terms of rhythms and things, the beats are the same. It's all music. That's actually not different from any instrument. Even drums, guitar, beats are the same. Now, if you're actually asking what rhythms you might play on each guitar, which I know some people use the word beats to mean rhythms, no, that's a little different, and you would just have to, it's a stylistic thing. There's no one criteria. In short, what you're doing is when you strum electric guitar, you take into account it's going to sustain because of the amp, and you can do things like one single strum and hold it out, whereas acoustic guitar, that one single strum just dies away, so you're probably going to have a little more action, a little more continuous strumming. It depends. In an electric guitar song, especially a heavy rock song, you probably are going to keep strumming. You want that power and force. Question, Linda, can you work on learning more than one thing at a time? Oh, yes. That's a great question. Linda, I'm always working on several things. All my students are. but the things I'm working on generally complement each other. So, and again, I would recommend you watch the replay because I talked about a practice session. And I'm going to summarize it. I will often do a practice session. I'll have students do a practice session where they'll start with a warm-up, which is usually an exercise they memorize and can play fairly easy, so they can focus on both relaxing and playing the technique just right, not on learning or going faster or any of those kind of things. Then I'll work on something that's the work of the practice session, maybe a new song, a technique, or both. I'll often do both in the practice section. I'll start with some technique and then practice some song, or I'll switch it up once in a while just for interest. And then I'll end the practice session with something that's fairly easy just to feel successful. But I'm always working on several things, unless there's a day where I need some reason to play this song the next day and I'm really just going to work on that one song. I'd always still warm up with something different. I almost never just work on one thing at a time. Question. Any more? We got some last minute questions. Michael is asking, I love playing along with songs on YouTube where the lyrics and chords are overlaid on the video. Is this productive practice or am I just noodling? I don't think it's an either or thing. I think it is productive, but if it's your only practice, you're probably not making the most use of your practice time. For several reasons. You're not playing songs in general, and I talked about this earlier, is not the most efficient use of practice time. You have certain things you need to work on, and you're playing a whole song maybe to work on a couple of things that are challenging, and the rest is easy. That's not an efficient way to practice. But also, when you're playing on YouTube, you've got to play with their tempo, and that means you need to sometimes slow down and just play it at a place you can play it and then build it up. You can't do that with a YouTube video. So I think it's a good part of your practice, but it should be a percentage of your practice to get the most out of your practice. Integrate practicing songs away from YouTube so you work on the rhythm and a slower tempo, and also practice techniques and in a progressive manner to get you better and better at what you need to keep moving forward and playing more complex songs. Question, is there a specific website we could learn more guitar from you? Because I learned acoustic guitar from YouTube, and now I'm learning electronics, so I wonder if I could learn from you. Yes. First of all, I have a guitar learning website, and there's a 14-day trial. You can sign up at realguitarsuccess.com. I also want to say my focus is on acoustic guitar. I do play electric guitar, but I've chosen to use the acoustic guitar and nylon string guitars for all my lessons. So a lot of the stuff would apply to play electric guitar, but some of the stuff is missing. I would do some things different in electric because of the amplification, distortion. I would do a lot more power chords, and I would teach more lead guitar too, because that's very common. I do teach lead, but not as much as I would if I was doing just electric. So keep that in mind. I think I got all the questions, at least all the ones that started with questions that I could see. Okay, so thank you all for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for the wonderful questions. I will be back the first Thursday. Technically, I'm on break, but I'm still going to keep answering questions once a month, the first Thursday of the month, 12 noon in Pacific Standard Time. That's in California. And, of course, you can figure that out wherever you are. Internet has great tools for that. Please come again. And if you'd like to submit questions ahead of time, I'd love to see them. You can send me an email. You can go on my blog, and there's places that you can contact me also. And I'll include those ahead of time. But I'm happy to answer the questions live on chat. Again, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you again next month. We'll do it again. Bye.